The guy pointed a gun at my wife's face, hands shaking like crazy, eyes bulging like he'd just seen a ghost, standing right in the middle of our front yard in Cedar Hollow, a suburb of Asheville, North Carolina. All because she jogged past the HOA clubhouse without wearing some damn resident badge. Me, Nathan Weaver, I was sitting in the kitchen, scrolling X on my phone, hunting for memes to unwind after a night of debugging code, when the security camera pinged. Thinking it was a delivery, I opened the app and nearly dropped my coffee mug when I saw the scene. Lila Weaver, my wife, stood still, hands slightly raised, facing Ralph Conway, the guy who called himself the captain of the Home Safety Patrol, HSB, the HOA's self-appointed police. I bolted to the door, mustard still on my shirt from breakfast, but before I could yell, it was over faster than the intro to a B-action flick. Before diving into the story, comment where you're watching from and don't forget to subscribe so you never miss the latest video. Lila, like every morning, went for a run, wearing a gray hoodie, earbuds in, steps steady as a metronome. She liked running at sunrise, when golden light spilled over the oak trees, making Cedar Hollow look less like a suburban prison camp. That day, she passed the HOA clubhouse, a white-painted building with a giant Safe Communities sign, when Ralph sped up in a black-painted golf cart, green zip-tie lights on top, siren wailing like a broken toy. He stopped, blocking Lila's path, jumped out, arms flailing like he was a bit player in Die Hard. "You! Stop!" Ralph bellowed, face red as a toaster, pointing at Lila. "No resident badge. Running by the clubhouse without permission is a violation." Lila stopped, pulled out an earbud, tilted her head slightly. "I'm just jogging," she said, voice even as if reading the news. "There's no law against it." Ralph, clearly not used to calm pushback, puffed out his chest like he'd rip his cheap tactical vest. "You're suspicious. No ID, no passage." He pulled out a fake pistol, a toy Glock you'd see at a dollar store, shiny as a Christmas ornament, and aimed it at Lila's chest, hands trembling, sweat dripping off his chin. "Hands up, now," he screamed, eyes bulging, smug like he'd just caught a drug lord. "We're HOA police. Higher than city cops here." I watched through the camera, heart pounding out of my chest. Lila's an active-duty Delta Force operative, just back from a mission I'm not allowed to ask about, the kind that makes her triple-check the locks at night. She could disarm a mercenary before he blinked, but there she stood, studying Ralph like a scientist eyeing bacteria under a microscope. "I'm going to ask you to lower your weapon," she said, voice soft but sharp as a razor. "For your safety." Ralph didn't listen. He stepped closer, gun still raised, muttering about arrests. And then, in a blink, Lila moved. She leaned, left hand deflecting Ralph's wrist, right hand twisting the gun from his grip. It clattered onto the grass, and before Ralph could open his mouth, Lila had him in an arm lock, face down on the ground, her knee lightly pinning his back like she was setting a pillow. She didn't even breathe hard, not a drop of sweat. "I asked," she said, picking up the gun, checking it like a toy, then tucking it back into his belt. "Next time, listen." When I ran out, barefoot, mustard-stained shirt and all, Ralph was crawling up, face redder than a ripe pomegranate. You attacked an HSB officer," he shrieked, voice cracking like he might cry. Lila shrugged, adjusted her earbuds, and kept running, step steady as if she'd never stopped. I stood there, heart still racing, half worried, half thrilled. "He doesn't know who you are, does he?" I shouted after her. Lila didn't turn, just raised a thumbs up, ponytail swaying. Back in the kitchen, I held a shard of the broken coffee mug, mind reeling from what I'd seen on the camera. Lila, my wife, taking down Ralph Conway like he was a broken puppet, all because she dared jog without an HOA badge. I figured that'd be the end of it, like Ralph would slink off in shame, and we'd go back to growing tomatoes in peace. But no, less than a day later, my phone lit up with a notification from Dorothy Vance, HOA president, calling an emergency meeting at the clubhouse. Email subject? Violent assault on HSB officer. Act now. I nearly spit out the last of my coffee on the screen. Me, Nathan Weaver. I'm not a meeting guy. I'd rather debug code all night than sit through neighbors bickering about fence paint colors. But after Ralph pulled a gun on Lila, I knew I had to go. Lila shrugged, said she had things to do, specifically organizing her toolbox in the garage with NASA-level precision. "Go watch the circus," she said, lips twitching into a rare smile. "Call if you need me." I joked, "Call for the water gun, or the real one?" She just gave me that look, the one that makes you wonder how you survived it. The HOA clubhouse looked like an 80s women's club meeting room, with plastic chairs in rows, a whiteboard with sloppy scribbles, and the stench of burnt coffee. Dorothy Vance stood behind a podium, wearing an oversized blazer, a giant HOA badge pinned on like an Olympic medal. Next to her was Ralph, arm in a fake sling, looking pitiful like he'd been hit by a steamroller. About 20 residents sat scattered, some whispering, others sneaking phone glances. I took a back seat, hoping no one noticed the guy in the Darth Vader tee who just walked in. Dorothy tapped the podium, voice shrill as a smoke alarm. "Dear Cedar Hollow residents," she started, "I call this meeting with a heavy heart. One of our dedicated HSB officers, Captain Conway, was brutally attacked on our streets." She pointed at Ralph, who nodded weakly, milking the pain act. I nearly laughed. Attacked? Lila went easier on him than she does playing with the neighbor's dog. Dorothy went on, pointing somewhere she thought I was sitting. "This woman, Lila Weaver, displayed dangerous behavior, threatening community safety. She jogged without a badge, defied HSB authority, and assaulted Captain Conway during his duties. She stressed duties like Ralph had stopped a terrorist plot." Residents murmured, a few eyeing me curiously. I raised my hand, couldn't hold back. "Excuse me," I said, standing, trying to sound calm. "You mean pointing a gun at a jogger is duties? Because if so, HSB needs to look up safety in a dictionary." The room went quiet, then a few chuckles broke out. Dorothy flushed but regained her plastic smile. "Mr. Weaver, we ask for order. This is serious." "Oh, I agree," I said, not missing a beat. "Serious enough that HSB thinks they're above city police. Who gave Ralph permission to aim a gun at an innocent person?" Dorothy opened her mouth, but no words came. Ralph fidgeted, staring at the floor like he wanted to crawl under the table. An old lady near me whispered, "He's got a point." Dorothy banged the podium harder, trying to regain control. "We have reason to believe Lila Weaver is a threat." She acted like someone trained to cause trouble. She said trained like Lila was a Soviet spy. I nearly snorted, thinking Lila could take down the whole HSB with a blade of grass and a shoelace, but chose not to. Instead, she let Ralph keep a shred of dignity this time. When the meeting ended, I got a text from Ethan, a scrawny teen living a few houses down. "Mr. Weaver, got something cool," with a link. I opened it, and holy crap, it was Ralph's body cam footage, pulled from HSB's cloud, probably hacked by Ethan. The video was crystal clear. Ralph drew the gun first, yelling about badges, while Lila just stood there, calm as a rock. I texted back, "You're a genius," and ran to tell Lila. Lila was wiping down a dagger. Don't ask why she needs a dagger to grow tomatoes, and just nodded as I spilled the story. "They want a war," she said, eyes glinting with that troubles-coming spark. "Let them try." I teased, "You gonna use the knife, or just stare Dorothy down?" She gave me that look again, but this time with a smirk. Less than 2 days after the HOA meeting, I got an email from the HOA. Subject, serious violation, Weaver household. The issue? Our front lawn was 0.3 inches too tall, and Lila's flower pot on the porch disrupted community uniformity. Fine, $200, due in 72 hours, or legal consequences. I read it, wanting to chuck my laptop out the window. Lila, peeling beans on the porch, just shrugged when I told her. "They want to play," she said, eyes flashing like when she checks her guns before a mission. "Let them. I'm not the type for lawn wars. I'd rather sit in my basement, spin Pink Floyd vinyls, and debug code than argue over grass height." But Dorothy had clearly declared war, and her HSB turned Cedar Hollow into a suburban East Germany. Black-painted golf carts with fake sirens and green lights started cruising by our house hourly, moving slow as a funeral, snapping pics of our garden like Lila was hiding a nuke under the tomatoes. Once, I caught an HSB guy, not Ralph, but some dude with a gut like a beer keg measuring our fence with a tape, muttering about a 2-degree tilt. I stood at the door, yelling, "Done measuring? Or should I call NASA to help?" He glared, then left, golf cart squealing like a spooked cat. Lila didn't care much. She kept running every morning, tending her flower beds, and occasionally checking the security cams with the focus of a general prepping for battle. But one morning, I saw the vine she'd planted by the fence hacked to bits, clearly on purpose. I braced for an explosion. Lila once said she could smell gunpowder a mile away, but she just grabbed shears and trimmed it back, calm as if clipping her nails. "They think this'll piss me off," she said, lips twitching. "They haven't seen me pissed." I joked, "You pissed means Ralph needs to move to another planet?" She glared, but this time with a wink. I couldn't sit still. Ralph's gun stunt and Dorothy calling Lila a threat. At the meeting kept spinning in my head. So I did what I do best. Hacked. Not bank heist stuff, just poking into the HOA's emails. Their security was worse than a neighbor's Wi-Fi password. After a few hours, I found a thread between Dorothy and a company called Evergreen Services, paid $180,000 by the HOA for landscaping upgrades. Upgrades? Cedar Hollow's park was a weed patch, and the only fountain was green with algae. I told Lila. She nodded. Eyes lighting up. They're laundering money or just stupid. Neither's good for them. Before I could dig deeper, there was a knock. It was Miguel Vargas, our neighbor 2 houses down, with his wife Rosa and their tiny son clutching a soccer ball. Miguel looked like he was about to box, eyes darting like he expected HSB to jump from the bushes. "Nathan, we need to talk," he whispered. In the kitchen, with Rosa glancing out the window, they said the HOA fined them $150 for leaving their kid's ball in the yard over 24 hours. "Dorothy said if we don't pay, she'll sue," Rosa said, voice shaky. "We're scared of getting evicted." It felt like a punch to the gut. This wasn't just Dorothy's game anymore. It was bullying the whole neighborhood. I told them about Evergreen, skipping the hacking details, just saying I heard rumors. Miguel nodded, eyes brightening. "I know someone who worked for the old HOA. She said Dorothy's always been shady." Rosa hesitated but finally said, "If you and Lila do something, we'll help." But quietly. I nodded, feeling like I'd just been drafted into a suburban Avengers. That night, I sat in the basement, laptop glow on my face, fingers clacking to dig more on Evergreen. The ghost company Dorothy and her HOA poured $180,000 into like tossing cash out a window. After HSB's patrol stalked our house like Lila was hiding missiles in the tomatoes, plus fines for grass and flower pots, I knew we couldn't sit idle. Lila, my wife, clearly agreed. That morning, she came downstairs, holding a pruning knife, don't ask why she carries knives everywhere, and said, voice soft as a breeze, "Find anything yet, Nathan?" I turned, forced to grin. "Just that Evergreen doesn't exist." "You gonna trim Dorothy with that knife?" She glared, but her lips twitched. "Keep digging," she said. "I'll handle the rest." Lila's not one for empty talk. She's an active-duty Delta Force operative who disarmed a gun-toting Ralph Conway in 3 seconds flat. And I knew when she said, "handle the rest," Cedar Hollow was in for a fight, suburban style, with fines and golf carts. Me, Nathan Weaver, I'm just a nerd who loves Pink Floyd vinyls and sci-fi comics. But if Lila was in, I couldn't stay out. Evergreen was the lead, and after Miguel and Rosa Vargas signed on, I felt we were forming a team, like X-Men. But instead of powers, we had laptops, tomatoes, and a burning hatred for the HOA. Lila planned fast, like she took down Ralph. She called me, Miguel, Rosa, and Clara Thornton, a retired lawyer once fined by Dorothy for early Christmas lights, to our house the next night. She even pulled in Ethan, the 16-year-old hacker kid who got me Ralph's body cam video. We sat in the living room, windows shut, curtains drawn, like we were plotting a coup. Lila stood in the center, arms crossed, voice steady as a mission briefing. "Dorothy thinks she runs a kingdom," she said. "But a kingdom built on fines and lies crumbles easy." I laid out Evergreen Services. After a few late-night hacks, I found the company was registered to Ralph's cousin, a guy in suburban Charlotte with no trace of landscaping work. Invoices listed park upgrades and streetlights, but Cedar Hollow's park was a weed jungle, and the streetlights flickered like a busted disco. "They're funneling HOA money into their pockets," I said, pointing at my laptop. $180,000, and that's just what I found. Clara, with thick glasses and a notebook full of scribbles, nodded. "I checked North Carolina law," she said. "HOAs can fine, but they can't impersonate police or destroy property. Your vine, Lila, is evidence." She looked at Lila, nervous but eyes gleaming. "Dorothy's breaking state law. With more proof, we can take her down." Ethan, cross-legged on the couch, munching a Snickers, held up his phone. "I hacked HSB's cloud," the kid said, smirking. "Got more videos. Ralph and his guys threatening an old lady on Oak Street for keeping cats outside. Another of them trying to dig through Miguel's trash." Miguel flushed, fist clenched. "She thinks she's king," he muttered. Rosa grabbed his hand, nodding at Lila. "We're in." Lila nodded, eyes scanning each of us like a general sizing up troops. "We don't need a fight," she said. "Just the truth. Nathan, you and Ethan keep digging financials. Clara, prep legal papers. Miguel, Rosa, talk to neighbors, but keep it quiet." She paused, glancing out the window as an HSB golf cart rolled by. And I'll make sure they don't touch my plants again. The next morning, Dorothy struck again. An HOA notice went out. All residents had to wear ID badges in public, even walking, with a $600 fine for violations. I read it, wanting to shred the paper. "This is a prison camp with lawns," I yelled, waving the notice at Lila. She glanced at it, shrugged. "They're scared," she said, grabbing pruning shears. "Scared people make mistakes." I dove back into my laptop, determined to gut evergreen. Ethan sent a new file, invoices for 10 fountains Cedar Hollow didn't have. Miguel reported neighbors whispering about Dorothy but too scared of fines to speak up. Lila added more cameras to the porch, moving like she was assembling a rifle. "They want surveillance," she said, eyes glinting. "Let them try." I jolted awake to the blaring siren of an HSB patrol cart cruising by our house, like Dorothy's reminder she still held the reins. After Lila quietly rallied our resistance crew, I thought Dorothy might back off. But no, instead of retreating, she doubled down, like a cornered animal swinging harder. That morning's email from the HOA, subject Community Safety, Urgent Action, declared Lila an official Level 1 threat, and our house under 24/7 surveillance. I read it, nearly spitting coffee on my keyboard. "Level 1. I muttered, showing Lila my phone. "She thinks you're Godzilla, or what?" Lila, trimming tomatoes on the porch, just shrugged. "She's shaking," she said, eyes flashing like she was prepping for a real mission. "Shaking means they screw up. I'm not built for head-on fights. I'm better in the basement, hacking emails and joking about Lila taking out HSB with a parsley sprig." But Dorothy left us no choice. HSB ramped up patrols, not just snapping pics of our yard, but stopping to shine flashlights in our windows at 10 p.m., like Lila was cooking bombs in the kitchen. Once, I flung open the door, yelling, "Looking for treasure or what?" The HSB guy, not Ralph, but a wiry dude with a silent movie mustache, glared, then peeled off, golf cart whining like a panicked cat. Lila, from inside, just said, "Let them tire themselves. We've got bigger work." Me and Ethan dug deeper into HOA emails. After late nights, me with coffee, Ethan with Mountain Dew, we found new invoices. Evergreen got another $50,000 for lake maintenance. Cedar Hollow's lake? A pond full of algae with dead fish floating. Ethan smirked, sent me a money laundering meme. "Bet Ralph knows it all," he texted. I agreed, but Lila said hold the evidence, don't drop it yet. "Wait for the right moment," she said, voice calm as newsprint. Dorothy, impatient, hit again. One evening, I got a notice from the local court. Dorothy filed for a restraining order to bar Lila from the HOA clubhouse area, citing violent behavior and safety threats. Evidence: a spliced HSB camera clip showing Lila locking Ralph's arm, but none of him drawing a gun first. I nearly threw my laptop. "She's playing dirty," I shouted. Lila just nodded, called Clara. Next morning, Clara showed up at court with Ethan's original video, clear as day with Ralph pulling the gun. The judge tossed the case in 5 minutes, warning Dorothy about abusing the legal system. I pictured her face red as a toaster, a rare moment I wanted to cheer for the law. But Dorothy didn't quit. She hired a local lawyer, some guy in a cheap suit, and held a small press conference outside the HOA clubhouse. On a megaphone, she called Lila a professional saboteur trained to disrupt. A reporter from the local paper, probably bored of covering farm fairs, scribbled fast. I stood a few feet away, pretending to check my phone, listening to Dorothy rant. "Mrs. Weaver threatens the Cedar Hollow lifestyle," she yelled. I nearly laughed. What lifestyle, living scared of fines? The reporter, Jim or something, turned to me, asked, "You involved?" I shook my head but winked. "Wait a few days." Back home, I checked my laptop and found another bomb. Dorothy used HOA funds for security gear, fake sirens, plastic vests, and a batch of radar guns off eBay, $20,000 total. "She's kidding HSB like SWAT cosplayers," I told Lila, pointing at the screen. She nodded, eyes brighter than usual. "She thinks this stuff saves her," she said. "Biggest mistake is underestimating us." That night, I heard a noise outside. Thinking HSB was at it again, I checked the cameras, but Lila was already out there, moving like a shadow. An HSB guy was trying to cut our camera wires, but before he could touch them, Lila appeared, locked his arm, laid him on the grass, and handed him a water bottle from the porch. "Go home," she said, voice soft as a lullaby. And tell Dorothy not to try again. The guy shook, bolted, leaving his pliers on the lawn. I ran out, heart pounding. What did you just do? Lila shrugged, fixed the vine. Reminded them who's in charge. After losing in court and that clownish press conference calling Lila a professional saboteur, I felt we'd scored a big goal. Lila, my wife, stayed cool as ever, like she hadn't just pinned an HSB guy to the ground. But Cedar wasn't Dorothy's playground anymore. Thanks to Ethan's HSB videos and the fake evergreen invoices I dug up, we had the upper hand. Lila knew it. When I told her about the curious reporter at the press conference, she just nodded, eyes glinting like she was ready for the winning move. Time to hit hard, she said, handing me a stack of papers. Print these. I'm not a flyer guy. I'd rather hack the Pentagon than stand on a corner handing out sheets like a raffle hustler. But Lila doesn't kid around. She and Clara Thornton drafted a short summary. Evergreen's shady payouts, the illegal ID badge rule, and HSB's bullying. Lila had me print 200 copies, enough to slip under every Cedar Hollow doormat. No names, she said. Just the truth. I stared at the stack, gave a weak laugh. Turning me into a paper Robin Hood. She shot me that look, the one that makes you do whatever she wants. That night, Miguel and Rosa Vargas joined, sneaky as spies. Miguel stuffed flyers in mailboxes, Rosa kept watch, while me and Ethan hit nearby streets, trying not to set off dogs. Clara, in beat-up sneakers, strolled slowly, faking a dog walk to throw off HSB. By midnight, the neighborhood was flyered, and I got home, heart racing, feeling like I'd run a marathon. Lila sat in the kitchen, checking cameras, lips twitching when I told her. Good, she said. Now let's see what they do. Next morning, Cedar Hollow lit up, suburban style. No flames, just whispers and sidelong glances. Neighbors gathered at street corners, holding flyers, pointing toward the HOA clubhouse. An old lady, probably the cat owner Ralph Hasselt, put up a yard sign. Dorothy, fine me for breathing, $50. I nearly spit my coffee seeing it. By noon, more signs popped up. HSB, cops or cosplay, and evergreen equals ever gone my money. I texted Ethan, you see this? The people are rising. He sent back a smirking emoji. Dorothy didn't sit still. She held a live stream from the HOA clubhouse, standing before a safe community banner, but looking like she was losing it. These flyers are lies, she screamed, arms flailing like she'd punched the screen. Lila Weaver is a divisive operative, trained to tear us apart. She called us an underground gang, making me nearly fall off my chair. Gang, I muttered, glancing at Lila watering plants outside. She's too busy with pumpkins to start a revolution. But Dorothy's stream backfired. Residents commented live, asking about Evergreen, HSB, where the fines went. Dorothy cut the stream after 10 minutes, face red as a toaster. Miguel ran over that afternoon, eyes gleaming. People are talking, he said. Fred on Elm Street's ready to sign a petition against Dorothy. Rosa, behind him, nodded. But some are still scared. They think Dorothy'll fine harder. I nodded, knowing we needed a bigger hit. Ethan, like he read my mind, sent a new file. Video of HSB rummaging the cat lady's trash, plus Ralph yelling at a kid for kicking a ball on the sidewalk. Posted on X, Ethan texted. Bet it goes viral. I hesitated. Dorothy could sue, but Lila, hearing me out, just said, do it. They want a public war, give it to them. I posted the video on X, anonymous account, captioned, HOA cops or HOA thugs? In 2 hours, it spread like wildfire. Thousands of views, comments, shares, then a flood of memes mocking Ralph and his black golf cart. Dorothy ordered a recall of illegal materials, but this time, no one listened. A group of old ladies chased an HSB guy off their lawn, swinging brooms like they were in a war. I told Lila. She smirked, eyes showing a hint of pride. They're waking up, she said, gazing at the sunset glowing over homemade signs. All over, neighbors huddled at corners, eyeing patrol carts with suspicion. For the first time, Dorothy's grip was slipping. But Lila's not one to wait. She came downstairs, holding a steaming mug of tea, eyes sharp as knives. Anything new? She asked. I spun the screen toward her, half grinning. Just a few $100,000 vanished. Want to print more flyers? She raised an eyebrow, lips curling. Keep digging. Their foundation's cracking. I'm not the hero type. I'd rather spin Pink Floyd vinyls and hack a neighbor's Wi-Fi than face off in the open. But with Lila leading, I'm sucked into an action flick where I'm the tech guy in the background. The flyers woke Cedar Hollow, but Dorothy's stubborn, and we needed a knockout. Evergreen was the key. Ethan texted me the night before, sending more invoices, $75,000 for 10 fountains the neighborhood didn't have, $30,000 for road repaving when the streets were still potholed. Bet Ralph's in on it, Ethan wrote, with a smirking emoji. I agreed, but Lila said hold off, wait for the moment. They'll dig their own grave deeper, she said, voice steady as newsprint. Dorothy, like Lila predicted, made it worse. That morning, she locked the HOA clubhouse, posting a sign, loyal members only. Like Cedar Hollow was a private golf club. Ralph Conway, still pathetic post-Lila takedown, stood guard out front, holding a leaf blower like a budget sci-fi weapon. I walked by, trying not to laugh, but Ralph glared like he'd eat me alive. What's funny, he growled. I shrugged. Just think you'd make a better comedian than cop. He flushed, but didn't act, probably still felt the grass on his face. While Dorothy barricaded herself, me and Ethan dug more. We found old emails between Dorothy and Ralph's cousin, Carl, confirming Evergreen was a shell company. HOA money hit Carl's account, then vanished in a maze of transfers I hadn't cracked yet. But the invoices were blatant. Park maintenance for a weed-choked park, holiday lights no one ever saw. I sent Lila a summary file. She read it, nodded. Enough to make them sweat, she said. Send it to Clara. Clara Thornton, with her scribble-packed notebook, didn't waste time. She called an old friend at the federal auditor's office, sent everything, Evergreen invoices, HSB videos, and a list of illegal fines. Less than 24 hours later, a city notice hit the HOA clubhouse, demanding financial records in 48 hours or facing a full investigation. I saw the notice on the community board, laughed till my sides hurt. They're done, I shouted, fist-bumping Lila. She just smirked. Not done. They'll thrash. She was right. Dorothy held a secret meeting at her house, inviting a few loyalists, the type who kiss up for fine discounts. Miguel Vargas overheard from a neighbor, ran to tell me. She said the flyers are a foreign hacker plot. He said, choking back a laugh. Foreign hackers? Me. Ethan texted when I told him, with a crying laughing emoji. At the meeting, Dorothy blamed invisible enemies, vowed more HSB patrols to protect the community. But residents weren't buying it. An old guy, once fined for feeding birds, stood up, asked point blank, where's the park money? What's Evergreen? Dorothy stammered, face red as a toaster, then kicked everyone out. I told Lila, she nodded. Eyes brighter than usual. They're fracturing, she said, checking her encrypted phone, sign of a bigger mission, but she didn't share. Keep the evidence, Nathan. We're close to the end. I dove back into my laptop, sent Ethan another hacking tool to trace transfer histories. Rosa said more neighbors wanted to sign a petition but feared HSB retaliation. They won't dare, I said, bolder thanks to Lila. I stood outside the town hall, heart pounding. Evergreen exposed as a ghost company, $180,000 gone. City audit slamming Dorothy. The neighborhood was about to erupt. Lila stepped out of the car, plain white shirt, as sharp as blades. Ready? She asked. I forced a grin. You're the star. I'm just backstage. She walked in, and I knew the final battle had begun. The hall was packed, residents crammed on plastic chairs, some clutching our flyers, whispering about Evergreen. Dorothy sat up front, next to her cheap suit lawyer, clutching a stack of papers thick as a phone book. Ralph, still pathetic, stood behind her, trying to look important, but seeming ready to bolt. Clara, Miguel, and Rosa sat near us, eyes gleaming as Lila took the podium. I snuck a glance at my phone. Ethan texted, live streaming this. Dorothy's toast. I winked at Lila. She gave a slight nod, and the city council, 5 stern faces, opened the hearing. Lila spoke first, voice steady as a mission brief. I'm Lila Weaver, Cedar Hollow resident, she began, setting a slim folder on the table. I have proof the HOA, under Dorothy Vance, abused power and stole resident funds. She laid it out point by point. Evergreen's fake invoices for non-existent fountains and paving, emails between Dorothy and Ralph's cousin, and $200,000 vanished from HOA funds. She played Ethan's HSB videos, Ralph threatening the cat lady, rummaging trash, yelling at kids, making the room buzz. This isn't safety, Lila said. eyes sweeping to Dorothy. This is bullying. Then she dropped the bomb. I'm an active-duty Delta Force operative, she said, voice calm but cutting. I'm trained to protect, not threaten. But when HSB pointed a gun at me for jogging, I knew Cedar Hollow wasn't safe because of the HOA. The room went dead silent, jaws dropped. Dorothy flushed, shaking her head like she could deny reality. I nearly clapped, but Lila wasn't done. She presented North Carolina laws, prepped by Clara, proving HSB's cop impersonation and fines broke state rules. Residents deserve to live, not fear, she finished, staring down the council. Dorothy stood, hands shaking with her paper stack. This is slander, she shrieked, voice shrill as a siren. Lila Weaver's a manipulator, trained to destroy communities. She flashed a photoshopped image, Lila by an armored truck, like a C-movie poster. Residents chuckled, some whistled. Dorothy, panicking, rambled a speech, accusing Lila of poisoning minds and calling HSB Cedar Hollow's shield. The council cut her off, one member asking flat out, explain Evergreen. Where's the money? Dorothy stammered, blaming accounting errors and foreign hackers. I glanced at Ethan in the back. He smirked, flashed a thumbs up. A council member, silver-haired, wearing glasses, stood. I'm a former Marine, he said, looking at Lila. I know what Delta Force does, and I thank you for your service. He turned to Dorothy, voice firm. Mrs. Vance, the evidence against you is undeniable. HSB isn't police, and the HOA isn't a kingdom. Dorothy slumped in her chair, face pale, muttering about conspiracies. Residents cheered, some yelling, that's right. I whispered to Miguel, she just lost her Waterloo on plastic chairs. The council ruled. Full HOA audit, accounts frozen, HSB disbanded immediately. Dorothy was ordered to resign or face lawsuits. Residents roared, Clara hugged Rosa, Miguel punched the air. I looked at Lila, she stood still, eyes calm as after a mission done. Good work, I said, patting her shoulder. She shrugged. Just what's right. But I knew for her, what's right is what you fight for, battlefield or backyard. Outside the hall, residents mobbed Lila, thanking her, some asking for selfies. She gave a rare smile, but I saw her check her encrypted phone, sign of a bigger mission. Dorothy, dragging Ralph, slunk out the back, avoiding eyes. I grinned, thinking of the Evergreen equals Evergone my money sign. Cedar Hollow was free, and Lila, with Delta Force precision, led the charge without firing a shot. The city council moved fast. The HOA was dissolved, accounts frozen, and residents got refunds for fines, including my $200 for overgrown grass. I got the check in the mail, laughed till my sides hurt, thinking of buying more vinyls to celebrate. Dorothy vanished from the neighborhood. Rumor was she took a sales job in a town 40 miles away, while Ralph hung around flea markets, selling old HSB vests for $5 a pop. I told Lila, she shrugged, watering tomatoes outside. They brought it on themselves, she said, voice soft as a breeze. Now let the neighborhood breathe. And Cedar Hollow was breathing. Kids biked on sidewalks, laughing without HSB snapping photos. Neighbors threw weekend barbecues, smells of skewers and roasted potatoes filling the air. Miguel and Rosa invited us over. Rosa handed me a plate of banana bread, thanking Lila for saving the block. I grinned, passed it to Lila, teased, they're canonizing you. She glared, but her lips twitched, that rare smile I knew was for when she's truly happy. The neighborhood park, once a weed patch with Dorothy's empty promises, got a resident-led cleanup. Clara, in her beat-up sneakers, led a group planting flowers and fixing benches. Ethan, the hacker kid genius, ditched his computer for a day to wield a shovel, though he still texted me Evergreen Park memes mid-work. I joined, dragged Lila along, and for the first time, I saw her laugh freely when a kid ran by, handing her a wild daisy. They don't need me anymore, she said, eyeing the park. I shook my head. They do, just in a different way. But I knew Lila never truly retires. She still ran every morning, checked security cams with Delta Force precision, and sometimes stared at her encrypted phone with that look, bigger missions calling. One afternoon, I caught her outside, reading an unmarked envelope, military, as always. I didn't ask, she didn't tell, but her eyes said enough. Peace in Cedar Hollow was a win, but she was built for other fights. I just teased, if you go, bring back some tomatoes. She smirked, punched my shoulder lightly. Residents, wanting to thank her, gave Lila a wooden sign, carved with, Cedar Hollow Hero, no fines forever. They set it by our front yard, next to the tomatoes. Lila wanted it down, called it overkill, but I convinced her to keep it. It reminds them they can stand up, I said. She nodded, left it there, and every time she jogged by, I caught her glance, lips twitching slightly. Miguel said some neighbors wanted a new community group, no HOA, just for barbecues and park fixes. Clara offered to draft rules. Ethan promised a free website, but no badges, he stressed, making me crack up. I looked at the neighborhood, from lit-up houses to kids playing, feeling like an 80s American movie where people live real with each other. Lila did that, not just toppling Dorothy, but teaching the block to fight, not with guns, but with truth and guts. I stood on the porch, watching Lila gently adjust the vine, the one HSB trashed, now lush green like nothing happened. You turned this place into paradise, I said, half joking, half real. Lila just shrugged, eyes softening a bit. Just what needed doing, she replied. I got it, for her, what needed doing was always protecting what's worth it, garden or community. Cedar Hollow was alive, more peaceful than ever. But I sensed something in her gaze, readiness. Maybe a new mission loomed, and me, as usual, would be the backstage guy with a laptop, coffee, and unshakable faith. Lila walked inside, set an envelope on the kitchen table, right by the Cedar Hollow hero sign the neighbors gave her after the hearing. I glanced, probably military, like always. More praise for beating Dorothy? I teased. She smirked, didn't take the bait. They thanked me for defending residents' rights, she said, voice steady but firm. Said I proved the power of truth. I nodded, picturing her standing tall in the hall, silencing Dorothy before the whole block. So? I asked. Missed the battlefield? Lila looked out the window, where her tomatoes glowed in the morning sun. Always, she said. But this was a battlefield too, just different tactics. I knew she meant it. Lila lived to protect, backyard or places I couldn't ask about. Cedar Hollow was a victory, but for a Delta Force operative, there's no retirement. She still ran mornings, checked cams like they were weapons, and when she glanced at her encrypted phone, I saw the eyes of someone gearing up for the next fight. I didn't ask, she doesn't like sharing, and I've learned to respect that silence. But today, as she tied her hair, threw on a jacket, I felt time running short. A black SUV pulled up out front, punctual as a Swiss watch. Lila grabbed a small bag, the kind I knew held enough to survive a war, and looked at me, eyes softer than usual. Hold the fort, she said, handing me a note. I opened it. Dorothy was just the warm-up. I'll be back. I laughed, heart catching a bit. Are you taking down now? I asked, keeping it light. She shrugged, gave my shoulder a light punch. Whoever needs it. Then she walked out, got in, door slammed, and the SUV glided off, blending into the morning haze. I stood on the porch, coffee gone cold, watching the street now full of kids biking and neighbors waving. Cedar Hollow elected a new manager, Harold Tate, a retired mechanic with a kind smile and one rule: don't bother anybody. Clara Thornton helped plan the park. Miguel and Rosa Vargas threw monthly barbecues, and Ethan was building a neighborhood site, swearing no badges ever. I grinned, thinking of the sign out front, the days Lila turned the HOA to ash. She didn't just fight Dorothy, she taught the block to stand tall, unafraid. I walked inside, set Lila's note by Rosa's banana bread from last week. Lila's a soldier, a warrior, but to me, she's the one who made our yard a battlefield and one without blood. I knew she was off somewhere far, facing dangers bigger than Ralph and golf carts. But I also knew she'd return, with sharp eyes, dry jokes, maybe a new tomato plant. I opened my laptop, checked the security cams, habit from Lila, and started the day like any other, but prouder. Lila fought on far-off fields and backyards, and me, the backstage guy with coffee and code, would always wait for her return. I looked out at the yard, where Lila's vine stood green, defiant against all HSB did. Hold strong, I muttered, to the plant and myself. Cedar Hollow was home, not for its streets or park, but because Lila gave it a heart. And when she came back, I knew our story would roll on maybe no Dorothy, but definitely coffee, tomatoes, and a few new fights. The story of Lila Weaver and her battle against the tyrannical HOA in Cedar Hollow mirrors real facets of life in America today, especially in suburban communities where homeowners associations, HOAs, can become sources of stress. Lila, a Delta Force operative, took down Dorothy Vance and her Home Safety Patrol, HSB, with truth and courage, showing the power of facing abuse of authority. Dorothy's fines for grass 0.3 inches too tall or demanding public ID badges reflect how some HOAs impose absurd rules, burdening residents financially and mentally. a common issue in U.S. suburbs, where 27% of people live under HOA management, per a 2023 Foundation for Community Association research report. Lila's moves, from handing out flyers to speaking at the hearing, prove unity and transparency can topple injustice, like residents' signs reading, "Dorothy, find me for breathing, $50 to protest." The takeaway? When facing overreach, act with truth and community bonds, not silent suffering. Learn from Lila, she didn't use force, but evidence like Evergreen Services' fake invoices to expose corruption. In real life, study local laws, like Lila and Clara Thornton did with North Carolina statutes, to defend your rights. Connect with neighbors, like Miguel and Rosa Vargas, to build collective strength. Ultimately, as Nathan reflects when Lila leaves, everyone has a role, whether star or backstage, in keeping a community fair and livable. Stay resilient, because truth, as Lila proved, is always the strongest weapon. Subscribe to catch thrilling stories like Lila's war against the Cedar Hollow HOA. Thanks for watching, and see you in the next video with more suburban showdowns.